Hey traders, so welcome to lesson 4. In this video, we're going to finally go over the actual entry model criteria. So I'm going to focus specifically on the entry. We're not going over the full analysis. In the following videos for this series, I'll just go over actual complete trade breakdowns and examples of trades that I've taken as well. So that's why in this video, I'm just going to focus specifically on the last part of when we are entering. So I want to make that clear so you don't just take this video alone and start trying to catch trades with it. You need to combine it with everything else that we have learned so far, and I'll show how to do that in the next video. But in this video, we're focusing specifically on the final entry criteria. So this is taken as an example from a trade that I actually took, and I'll break that entire trade down in the next video. But what we are looking at today is, as I mentioned in the last video, I use the delta as the primary tool in finding my entries. And I want to show you how I combine that with our price charts and what we look for on the delta. So if you remember from our supply and demand series, when we are looking for sells, we want to identify supply. And in order to identify supply, we first need to find an impulsive selling move. And that is defined by looking for an impulsive gap. So we have that right here. And then you want to look for the last buying move before that selling happened. So I'm going to draw my supply, and it's from this candlestick. And you might be wondering, why am I taking a selling candle as my supply? But since this is the impulsive selling candle, essentially everything before that is part of the buying move. So the buying starts over here, right? Price is being pushed up, and then it's only at this point over here that the impulsive selling has actually started. So anything above that, this range here, is included as our supply. And we just refine it to the very last candlestick, which is here. But, if you wanted, you could take this entire move right from here. But I always just look at the very previous candle. So that is why I have drawn this candle, even though it is technically a bearish selling candle. It is not an impulsive move, so therefore it is still part of that overall buying move, and the selling starts at this point. So I hope that is clear. So we have identified supply based on just price action and supply and demand theory. So as we know, these supply and demand zones appear all the time. I mean, if you look over here, we have another supply zone because we have this impulsive selling candle right below it, right? However, you can see that this supply zone failed because price is going up higher here. So we want to avoid situations like this, getting trapped in weak supply. And the reason why that supply is weak and this one is strong is because we use the delta to confirm our supply and demand. And that's how I'm able to increase my probability and win rate by simply having a basic SMC theory and just adding a footprint or delta confirmation to help me identify and actually not have to guess anymore and actually know where a strong supply and demand is. So let's go into how we do that. So the first thing is, let's take our zone. So this is the 230 candle. So on the footprint, if we go to the 230 candle, which is over here, this is our supply candle. Now, unfortunately, I can't go into a replay mode, so just ignore everything that's happening after this candle for now. We want to focus on this candle, and I'll just make it bigger for us. And I'll just take this off because it kind of fades the chart, but we are looking at this candle. So all we want to do is basically we've confirmed impulsive selling because we have the gap. But you want to use the delta to confirm that there were actually buyers before this impulsive selling happened. And that's what we do with the delta. So since we have that 230 supply candlestick here, you want to look inside it. And I don't look at the overall delta, I look at the delta within the candlestick, and I identify if there was active buying within that sell candlestick. And you can see that here we have 126 and it's highlighted in a strong green, and with experience you'll be able to identify what the strong numbers are as well. But in general, you can just look at the green highlight as well. You can see that there were active buying in the sun candlestick before that impulsive selling came in. So all I do is I mark that level, the literal buy before the sell. So essentially what we want to see is price returns to this level. So there are two ways that you can do this. Either is to look for a delta shift, and Sandra has videos about this, but it's simply when you go from buying to selling on the delta, right? So you can either enter after a delta shift, so it won't happen immediately. You can wait for that to happen. So then when that shift happens, you can enter on the candle close of this candle. Or sometimes I enter already when I just see we reached our level and we had a negative delta close. So I have it in my trade journal here, and in this particular trade I waited for the actual delta shift because that is just a bit safer. So that is this 615 candle. So if we play forward on our price chart, and we see we are in the supply, and then we get the shift, that's 615. I take the entry over here on the candle close, so you always have to wait for the 15-minute close, and then you enter. And I always put the stop loss at the nearest minor high. In this case, the minor high was also the last swing high. And in this particular trade, I remember that it was a bigger stop loss. This was like just before the election, so the stop losses aren't usually this big, but all the criteria for my entry was met, so I took the trade regardless of the stop loss size. And I always target a 1 to 3. So like I said, because the stop loss was bigger, it was quite a big TP for GU, 116 pips. But I just followed the strategy mechanically, and you can see that it did play out. We did have a reaction to this demand over here, so you'll see that price actually starts to reverse. And the reason that, most of you would have said, why didn't I just maybe close at the demand or take profits? But what I did was, after I had my entry, I looked in here again, and I wanted to look for if there was another supply. And the next clean supply was this candle. I know this might be getting hard to see with this in the way, so let me just delete that. We had this supply, and this candle is 445, so let's go over here. So if we mark that here and we look, we can see that there was no strong buying activity in this candle. So for me, I would have taken a scale-in entry, but however there was nothing in there that made me think the supply was strong. Of course, the supply and demand zones could still hold because of just basic SMC, but this one is more high probability. This one, if you look at most SMC traders, they probably have a win rate of around 30%. And I don't want to take 30% probability, I want to take the higher probability of trading these zones. So I didn't scale in or take an entry here, but I knew there was still a possibility to react from this demand, react to the supply, and then you see that price consolidated a bit, and then it finally did go down to my TP. So yeah, again, you can see that this was a weak supply because it got touched about 3 times here, so I wouldn't have wanted to enter from there. But yeah, this is simply the entry model. So to reiterate, you want to look at the supply zone, you want to see if buyers were standing out in that candlestick. So if we remember the 445 example, the highest amount of buyers in this candlestick is 26, whereas the highest amount of sellers is minus 37. So for me, that is not showing me that buyers are really interested in this level. Whereas in this example, you're having 126 compared to 26. So yeah, that definitely shows me buying interest. So I take that supply, and then you're waiting to reach that level and get a delta shift. The first candle that is showing a delta shift once you reach that level, and that is this candle. So let's delete some of these. It was this candle, and you can see again, like, sellers are really strong in that candle as soon as you get that delta shift. So again, it's just a nice confluence. But yeah, I just enter anyway on the close of this candle after the delta shift, and I take a 1 to 3 every single time. So in the next video, I'll actually do a complete breakdown of this trade, what I was looking at on the higher time frame, lower time frame, why I was looking for this supply in the first place, and I'll just keep sharing breakdowns of trades that I've taken. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this series. In the next video, I'll go over a complete trade example. So I'll see you in that one.